If something doesn't kill you, does it always make you stronger? I'm not convinced of that. You only need to scroll through Facebook, Instagram, to read story after story of the glamorized zero to hero version of adversity. And the idea that if something doesn't kill you, always makes you stronger, has been glamorized, romanticized, misguided, and at best, simplistic. Because the truth is, if something doesn't kill you, it doesn't always make you stronger. When things are collapsing around you and slipping away from you, it's often really hard to know how to feel, how to behave, what to think. When we're in the midst of adversity, most of us behave in ways which we would never have imagined we could have behaved. And it's only when we look back do we think, God, what was that about? I'd like you to imagine a vase, a beautiful vase, and that vase represents an aspect of your life. It could be a relationship, a job, a view you have of yourself, a view you have of your world. It doesn't really matter, but the thing you know for sure is that you absolutely love that vase. You treasure it. It's wonderful. And every day you look at that vase, you admire the beauty. And then one day, that vase smashes to the ground. And what you have are the shattered pieces of the vase. That's the nature of adversity. The road to recovery is often dark, traumatic, filled with absolute crippling uncertainty, and sometimes we cannot find our road back. What you do with the pieces is instrumental to your resilience. Some people, they take the pieces and they frantically try to put the vase back together. Just want to go back to the way it was, just want to go back to the way it was. They're filled with uncertainty, denial, they disconnect. They're constantly trying to put the vase back together. It can never be a vase again. And often, they cannot put those pieces back together, and eventually, they become so broken and disconnected from themselves and from others, it leads to mental health conditions, breakdowns, suicide, relationship breakdowns. They're not managing the adversity. They're trying to put things back together. They're so broken that there really is no way back for a lot. So if something doesn't kill you, does it always make you stronger? Well, clearly, if we're talking suicide, no, it doesn't. There's nothing romantic in that. It's hard work and it's painful. Some people take the pieces and they do something that is interesting, and you've seen it all the time. Perhaps you do it. They take those pieces because they cannot bear to feel the anxiety, the fear, the denial, the pain, and they shove it under the carpet. They pretend it hasn't happened. They go into a very interesting form of denial. Denial disconnects you from others. It's too painful to look at the pieces, so what do? We shove them under the carpet, pretend they don't exist. But here it is, folks, it exists. And when you step on that carpet, you will eventually feel the pain. Has it killed you? No. Has it made you stronger? Probably not. And then some people do something really, really magical. They take the pieces and they make something very different, and it will never be a vase. They take every single one of those pieces of that vase and they work through the pain. They work through the trauma. They work through the adversity. And they make something different. That's called post-adversity growth. It's the gift of adversity. It's when you take something of that adversity and you make it different. It will never be a vase. It can be a mosaic. It can be whatever you make it, but it will never be a vase. I'd like you to think for a minute about the last adversity you experienced, what did you do? Are you trying to put it back together? Are you shoving it under the carpet? Or have you made something different? And so, the magic, the gift of adversity. So why are some people more resilient than others? If something doesn't kill you, does it always make you stronger? Clearly you've seen it doesn't. But let's just think for a minute, well, what is it? Why are some people more resilient? Why are some people able to take the adversity and make something different? That has been my lifetime's work. Just looking at what it is. Well, there are 3 things that those who've taken the adversity and made something different, they have 3 things in common. First, they all have a 3 a.m. friend. Second, they're intensely curious. Third, they focus on actual self-care every day opposed to consumer self-care. Okay. Having a 3 a.m. friend is crucial to your resilience. It's that person that when things go wrong, you could talk to them at 3 a.m. and really importantly, they wouldn't judge you. Because when you're feeling really bad about something, especially if it's an adversity that you've caused, the last thing you need is somebody shaming you. Brené Brown, fantastic TED speaker, if you've not seen her talk, please do. And she's a shame researcher. And she has a wonderful way of thinking about shame. She says the antidote to shame is empathy. That's what you need. When you're feeling so bad about a situation, when you reach out to your 3 a.m. person, they're the ones who are not going to judge, who are going to be empathetic. And that person will help you through survival to adaptation, and then to recovery, and then hopefully to growth. Because at some point, you are going to get a phone call that you don't want, or have a conversation that's going to change your life. And that's what happened to me. Thank God I was with my 3 a.m. friend, because it was such a gorgeous day, we were having such a good time. And I got that call, and it was my mum. And she was screaming over and over and over, "Your brother's dead, your brother's dead, your brother's dead." And at the same time, she was saying to me, "Pick up the phone, pick up the phone." I was on the phone. Thank God I was with my 3 a.m. friend, because at that moment I froze. I know all about resilience, but I'd never experienced that level of shock. And the first thing she did, and I don't drink, by the way, she took me to this hotel. Thank God we were right there. And she got 2 brandies, shoved them down my throat. But you know, in my darkest hours, she was there. In my darkest hours, she actually fought when I couldn't fight. So take a minute. Do you have a 3 a.m. friend? If you don't, I'm wondering why not. Because in my experience, the people who don't, they emotionally isolate. So when they're in survival, they isolate themselves. Think for a second, what's it like when you isolate? And importantly, what's it like for those around you? If they cannot get to you when you're in your deepest, darkest hours, what's it like? Thank God I had my 3 a.m. friend. Thank you, Jen. Second, the people who are the most resilient, who get to growth, they have an intensely curious mind. And they're curious more or less every day. Even when they're in survival, they're still curious. And they've cultivated this over time. So someone who has a curious mind, during adversity, this is what they will do. They'll focus on the solution. They will know that that situation is temporary. And they will absolutely know there's something they can do. Think about it. The last adversity you had, if you had that mindset where, okay, this is temporary, there's something I can do, and it won't always be like this. That's great, you don't get stuck in the adversity. Those people who do not move away from survival and get stuck in the adversity, they have this kind of mindset. This is permanent, I'll focus on the problem, and there's nothing I can do about it. You can begin to see why some people are more resilient than others. And curiosity is the heartbeat of resilience. I cannot emphasize how much curiosity matters. In any bit of research you will ever read on resilience, you'll see a curiosity being the heartbeat. I'll tell you a story because actually, I think it's funny, but maybe some of you won't. But anyway, I used to be a beauty therapist many years ago, and I really loved my job. I had my own business, absolutely adored every aspect of my job. And then one day, a client came in for a facial. Never seen her before. She was really relaxed. She was having a facial, and she said these 6 words that changed my life. She said, very quietly, "I'm thinking of killing my husband." I was so excited, not because of the killing, not because of the killing, but why. Okay. And that wouldn't leave me. She didn't kill her husband, she left him, by the way, just in case the police are outside. It didn't leave me. And I got careers advice. And I said to the lady, I still remember her, "What do I do about this curiosity? It won't go away." This is what happened. She went, criminal psychology. How do I do that? Do you have a degree? No. Do you have A-levels? No. Well, that's what you need to do. And that's what I did. So I'm here. Lastly, and I would say probably most importantly, the people who are the most resilient are the ones who practice actual self-care more than they practice consumer self-care. So, consumer self-care is this. When you feel bad, when you feel awful, as you're shoving the pieces under the carpet, as you're trying to put the pieces back together, you won't look at the pain, you won't look at the anxiety, you won't look at the worry, you won't look at the disconnect. You'll use alcohol, you'll use food, you'll use Netflix, you'll go gaming for hours and hours, you'll overspend, you'll shop. You do all those things that make you disconnect from the pain. And that's okay on a temporary basis. Look, I'm all for chocolate cake and bubble baths. Okay? I'm really all for it. But that cannot be your go-to. It cannot. Because if that's your go-to, you live in a land of denial. And you're taking the pieces and shoving them under the carpet. Okay? Actual self-care is very different, and this is key. The people who are the most resilient, they practice actual self-care every day in, day out, day in, day out. So what is actual self-care? It's this. It's accepting yourself. If you're an introvert, yay, fantastic. Accept it. Don't work against it. It can be really hard to accept who you are. It can be hard to accept that actually you've just made a really bad decision, and that bad decision is going to affect a lot of people. Accepting yourself as, I'm in a really bad marriage, but I don't want to be in this any longer. Accepting that you're not a bad person. Sometimes we behave badly. It doesn't make us bad. So accepting yourself, the people who are the most resilient, they have that attitude and they've learned to do it over time. They re-strategize failure. And they almost do that on a weekly, monthly basis. They're wiring their brains to re-strategize. So when adversity strikes, their brains are wired to re-strategize. They pay their debts. They look at the debts. They don't shove the pieces under the carpet. So, practicing actual self-care is taking the pieces in all its pain and making something else, because you wire your brains to that thing. And having a difficult conversation will wire your brain to having a difficult conversation during adversity. So having difficult conversations, as much as you can, it wires your brain very differently. It wires you to get to post-adversity growth. And so, if something doesn't kill you, does it always make you stronger? Well, clearly, you can see that sometimes it really doesn't. And the whole notion, and I get really angry about this, excuse me if I'm going to get angry, but the whole thing about bouncing back, we just bounce back, we all bounce back, otherwise we'd be dead. But it's the mess you leave behind that's important. And what you do with the pieces is important. And so practicing actual self-care, having a curious mindset, being kind to yourself during the adversity is key. And so, we still don't know if my brother was murdered or committed suicide. It's still in process. But what I've learned from that is to be more compassionate with myself, with my family, with my clients, with my friends. Yeah? That's the gift I've learned. It's wonderful. And so following an adversity, you can be sadder and wiser, or happier and wiser. If you've got to growth, you'll always be wiser, but you won't always be happier. So, where am I in that spectrum? I'm definitely sadder and wiser, and I would have my brother back in an instant and trade every single bit of compassion I've learned. I take it. I don't want it. But it's not the reality, and I'll take that. So, yes, I'm mentally stronger as a result. I'm just that little bit more emotionally fragile, and that's okay. That's the gift of adversity. Thank you so much.